I will call to order the Parks and Recreation Commission meeting for March 22nd. Will you please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? All rise. Ready, play. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Rose, will you call roll, please?
Chair Longstreet.
Here.
Vice Chair Clark. Here. Commissioner Cavazos. Here. Commissioner Lesnar Buxton. Here. Commissioner Martinez Cohen.
Here.
Commissioner Armbruster.
Here. Okay, thank you. Any changes to the agenda? None? Okay. Any written communications? Public comment. Any member of the public may address the commission for up to 2 minutes on any subject within the jurisdiction of the commission that is not scheduled for a public discussion before the commission. Total amount of time for public comment will be 15 minutes. And we have one public comment speaker, Dan McCarter. Welcome.
Thank you. Madam Chair and Parks Commission members, this is regarding a wildlife preserve. Friends of Arroyo Burro requests of the Parks Department a new designation for the Las Positas Valley restoration at 601 Las Positas Road. The community is requesting a wildlife preserve. Las Positas Valley restoration is surrounded by dog parks, and dogs displace wildlife and contribute to poor water quality. There are dogs digging at wood rat nests on the Douglas Family Preserve, dogs chasing birds on the beach at the estuary at the Arroyo Burro Beach Park. Ealings Park is a dog park. Arroyo Burro Open Space Park is a backup dog park when no parking is available at the beach. While most people pick up their dog poop, some obviously do not. While most dogs are leashed, some have a more liberal exercise plan. The reality is our lovable canines displace wildlife and produce coliform bacteria, which contribute to poor water quality. Designating the Las Positas Valley restoration, a mere 6 acres of a wildlife preserve, affords the riparian habitat more protection. Many special status species in Santa Barbara depend on a healthy riparian habitat to survive into the future. The Las Positas Valley restoration is the most complete riparian habitat in Santa Barbara. It is our responsibility as stewards to protect these creatures. We have parks for people, we have parks for dogs. It's time to designate a park for wildlife. Please put Wildlife Preserve on your agenda for discussion and consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, with that, I will close public comment. And it brings us to our Youth Council report. And I believe we have Jensen Steady. Welcome.
Madam Chair and the members of the Parks and Rec Commission, I'm Jensen Steady, the treasurer of the Santa Barbara Youth Council. So the Youth Council, working with Just Communities Can Do students, attended the grants award party of the Fund for Santa Barbara and received a Youth Making Change grant for $1,800. As reported, the grant funds will be used for our Project Alma, which is Adolescent Leaders Modeling Acceptance. The project will consist of doing focus groups with individual teens to gather information to help bridge the gap of understanding the challenges for undocumented teens in our community, and will be followed by educational workshops to help provide resources. Secondly, we are still coordinating our annual Teen Leadership Conference. It was tentatively scheduled for April 8th, with workshops on bullying, teen dating violence, facilitating peace circles, and advocacy. We have some scheduling conflicts, but hope to still hold it on that date. If not, we will provide the new date. We have invited youth council boards from Lompoc, Oxnard, and Ventura to network with other youth boards as our own. Lastly, we are currently brainstorming fundraising ideas to help with the cost of our activities such as these. So look out for upcoming bake sales and restaurant fundraiser days. We're also considering coordinating some type of flea market. So the funds will be used put on our speak outs and assist with attending youth conferences and such. So thank you for your time. Any questions?
Any questions of the commission? Thank you, and do keep us informed on those dates, because I'm sure we all eat in restaurants and do fundraisers, so thank you.
Yes, of course. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you very much. Commissioner committee assignment reports. Shall we start with Mr. Cavazos?
Yeah, I attended the, what do we call it, the retreat, where we went out as commissioners this past weekend to check out some of our parks and programs. It was very enlightening. I would encourage all of you and our millions of viewers to get out there and check out the parks that are available to you, the programs that we offer, and see what's going on. It was a great day.
Thank you. Mr. Lesnar Buxton.
I attended the neighborhood advisory committee where my organization, Independent Living Resource Center, gave a presentation about our services in the community to people with disabilities.
Thank you. Ms. Clark.
On March 2nd, I attended the Street Tree Advisory Committee meeting where we visited the 2 trees that are on our agenda. We'll talk about later. I also attended the tour of parks and facilities for commissioners last weekend and got to see a lot of places I didn't even know existed, like the Creo Gym, which looks like it was much loved and it's very in need of renovations and has a rooftop basketball court. And we got to visit Municipal Muni Tennis and got to see inside that stadium, which is another piece of history. Just beautiful facilities I had no idea we had, so I look forward to revisiting those sites later in the budget and seeing what we can do as a community for those facilities.
Thank you. Ms. Martinez-Cohen.
I attended the subcommittee for the Creeks Division on the budget, 2-year annual budget cycle meeting. So we'll be learning more about that as a commission. It's going to go to the regular Creeks Advisory Committee and then to us, and then hopefully onto the City Council for approval of that budget. They talked about a lot of different projects in detail, but we'll be receiving a report on that. And unfortunately, I was not able to attend the Arts and Crafts meeting this month. It was on the 14th, I believe. The timing of it is a little difficult for me. It's kind of late at night and it goes very long.
Okay.
When they hear new members, they start the meeting at 7 instead of 6:30, and I've seen that it goes till about 9. Anyways, it's very tough for me to go with my baby.
Yes.
So I haven't been able to attend those meetings, and I do apologize about that.
Thank you. Ms. Armbruster.
I attended the golf committee meeting. They've just completed some aerification of the golf course. It's looking really good. They've weathered the storm and cleaned up some trees that had fallen out there. They also have a lot of new clinics that are scheduled for this year that are new to the agenda, as well as some new events that they're going to be holding, like the Easter egg hunt on April 15th to get more people out to the golf course. So, yeah.
Thank you. I attended the Saturday tour, and it was very informative, and also the Neighborhood Advisory Council, where Commissioner Lesnar Buxton presented, and the Independent Living Resource Center, and it was interesting to hear the services they provide to all age groups, but it was especially interesting to hear things that were applicable to our aging population, and I was very appreciative of the programs I learned about. All right, so that brings us to commission and staff communications. Anything? Okay, and now we're on to ceremonial items. Ms. Zachary.
Chair Longstreet and members of the commission, Luis Gomez, who's a recreation coordinator for our department, is going to do this presentation. He is new to Parks and Recreation. Well, not so new now, but I think this is his first appearance before the commission, so we welcome him.
Thank you, Jill. Good afternoon, Chair Longstreet and Commissioners. My name is Luis Gomez, and I'm the Recreation Coordinator for the Neighborhood and Outreach section in the department. It's my pleasure to give you a presentation today about our department's food distribution program, its history, its current status, and also recognize some of our 8 volunteers that are currently here to acknowledge all their time and talent to make our program successful, because without them, we could not be able to do it. All right. So the program was first implemented in May of 1997 at the Lower West Side. It was a partnership with the Food Bank of Santa Barbara County as a way of providing low-income residents with fresh fruits and pantry items. And it now is supported through the work of city staff, which includes myself, Christy Rojo, our recreation program leader, and Dennis Harris, as well as our wonderful volunteers, and with the support of the food bank staff as well. And now we've moved on to 3 locations. The goal and purpose of the program is to serve 13,000 households annually. That is one of our P3 goals. And to assist and to provide healthy produce and pantry items. We originally started back in the day with really sugary and forgot the word, processed foods, and now we're moving to really local, fresh veggies and produce. Our 3 locations are the Franklin Neighborhood Center, Parque de los Niños, and the West Side Neighborhood Center. Among those 3 sites, we have 3 different types of food distributions. The first one is the farmer's market, which is fresh vegetables and fruits. The food pantry does contain vegetables and fruits, but it also has dried and canned goods such as rice, beans, breads, but also household items such as tissues and Pampers, which are a hot commodity. And the third one is the Brown Bag Program, which is our senior program, and those are prepackaged produce and pantry items that is specifically for seniors only. The requirements are low-income residents. However, we won't turn away anyone that is in need of food. For food pantry and farmers market, you do have to be 18 years and older, and we only require basic demographic information such as name, household size, and ethnicity. Where the Brown Bag Program, which is our senior program, which you have to be 60 years or older, you do have to go through an application as the food that they're given is provided through USD funding from the federal government. So they have to report that back. Our schedule, which is a little complicated, our farmers market at the Franklin Center is every Thursday at 1 o'clock. The food pantry is every 3rd Tuesday of each month at 1:30. At Parque de los Niños, the food pantry is the first Tuesday of each month at 1 o'clock, and the farmers market is the 2nd Tuesday of each month. And at the West Side Center, the farmers market is every Monday at 1 o'clock, and the Brown Bag Program is the 2nd and 4th Friday of each month from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. In regards to our numbers, in the fiscal year 2016, we served a little bit over 10,000 individuals. At the end of this mid-year fiscal 17, we served a little bit over 3,500 individuals. This is a 31% deduction over our fiscal year mid-year numbers. And we did reach out to the food bank about this because it was a large number. And they've just stated they've seen a decline throughout the county overall. And one of the basic items that they're seeing as a decline is affordable housing. And one of the sites that's being really impacted within our program is the Lower West Side. We're seeing not that much participation, where the Franklin and the West Side is really highly attended. And we've asked participants the reason why, and they've stated that affordable housing in that area is kind of making them move out of that section, no longer participating in our programs. But on a fun fact, we did this past mid-year fiscal 17, we did donate over 45,000 pounds of food to our residents. I was trying to make that as like an image of like an elephant, like donating an elephant. But I'm not sure if an elephant is 45,000 pounds. It's probably like in the tons. For our volunteer hours, our gracious volunteers donated over 1,500 hours this mid-year fiscal year 2017. And some of our volunteers have been with us for more than 15 years. Some will say that they were there since the beginning. We don't have any proof, but they say so. So our program goals are to serve 13,000 households for the fiscal year 17. We are really focusing on increasing participation at Parque de los Niños. So we are doing outreach, and we're posting flyers and really getting the word out that there is that distribution site. And we are in need of additional volunteers for the Parque de los Niños, but also for the Franklin Center, because without them, our program would not be able to be implemented. For future outreach opportunities, we're looking to connect with faith-based organizations to provide those numbers, that information to their following, but also, like I said, community marketing as well. And something new this year is we started to oversee the Brown Bag program. So in the past, a lead volunteer from the food bank used to just kind of implement the program, but now Christy Rojo is actually overseeing it and connecting with the volunteers. And so we're learning a lot from them because they have a lot of the history of the program. And lastly, we would like to thank the Food Bank of Santa Barbara County. I don't think there's a representative here, but they're a great resource to our community, and they're an amazing partner. I've worked with Liz, who's my contact there for many, many years, and they're just fabulous and always willing to support us. But overall, I would also like to thank our food distribution volunteers, which the photo is here from the Lower West Side, because like I've been saying, this program could not be as a success as it is without them. So give it a round of applause for the Santa Barbara County Food Bank and our food bank distribution volunteers. And so, any questions? All right, so we're gonna hand out the certificates.
Thank you to Thank you to those of you who came tonight, and also to the ones that couldn't make it. We do really appreciate all the work that goes into this. I know I manage low-income senior housing, and the Brown Bag program is important to many of my seniors, and they depend on that food. So thank you very much for all that you do. So our first, and if I'm going to apologize ahead of time if I mess up your name, okay? Janice Aramaki, would you like to come forward?
I've been at the program for over 30 years.
30 years.
Over 30 years. It's unverified, maybe. But it's been a blessing and a privilege to be able to work with the program and to assist the seniors and to be with volunteers.
Thank you so much. 30 years of service is remarkable. Okay. And we have Pablo Flores. Thank you, Mr. Flores. Thank you so much. And we have Thurley Gage. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for all your work. Narciso Gonzalez. Thank you so much. Thank you. And Laura Lynch. Hi, thank you so much.
I just wanted to mention that when I started first working with the Independent Living Resource Center, and that was in 1986, we did hand out brown bags to seniors.
Oh.
So somewhere somebody lost that history.
Oh,
Okay.
Thank you. Susanna Madruno. Susanna? Okay, we'll just leave Susanna there. Maribel Navarro. Thank you so much. Juan Perez. Okay. Zoraida Sanchez. Thank you. Polly Silvasi. Hi there. Thank you. You're my neighbor. And we really appreciate all your hard work. Thank you so much. You make the program possible.
And if I may, just one word in Spanish. Para todos los voluntarios que hablan español, gracias por todo su tiempo, su dedicación y por haciendo todo lo que hacen. Gracias. Oh, I'm sorry, I apologize. There is another volunteer that is here. Her name is Nancy Thompson.
Your certificate, here we go. Thank you very much, Ms. Thompson.
So much. I come because I was homeless for 23 years and I got housing 4 years ago, and I'm so grateful for all the free food I got from the mission and other places. So it's my way of giving back to the community. So.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Have a nice day.
We have another arrival, Susanna. Would you like to come on up and get your certificate? I know I signed, I think, 29 of these, so you're quite a large group of volunteers, large and loyal. Thank you so much for what you do. Thank you. Just give me all 29 and we'll go. Wanda Butcher? Hi, thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Longstreet and commissioners. Have a great day.
Thank you, and we appreciate all that you do. And good job on your first presentation, Luis. Okay, now we come to summary of council actions. Are there any questions or comments? No? Okay, we will move on to the minutes. We need to accept the minutes of February 22nd.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, that passes unanimously. And that brings us to Street Tree. Welcome, Mr. Downey.
Chair Longstreet and Commissioners, our first item is 2514 Castillo Street. This is a street tree, a Nichols willow leaf peppermint. The applicant emailed me after the Street Tree Advisory Committee action and is opposed to their recommendation. She emailed me again late this afternoon apologizing that she couldn't attend the meeting. So I wanted to share that she opposes the recommendation.
Thank you.
Her request is based on some past history with the tree. About 5-6 years ago, it dropped a couple of limbs in her front yard. And since that time, the city has pruned the tree back to compensate for how large it was. The other issue for her is that when she backs out of her driveway, it's very close to her driveway, and with the traffic that close to Cottage Hospital being so heavy, she has difficulty getting out of her driveway. She also mentions benefits to other trees. If the tree were removed, they'd receive some additional light. The committee looked at the tree and discussed it, and in a split vote, they determined that the tree is such a nice specimen of its species that it would be a loss to the neighborhood. So they voted 3-1 to 1 abstention to deny the removal, and staff supports that recommendation.
Okay. Are there any questions of staff? We have no public comment on this item. Any comments? A motion?
I'll make a motion to agree with the Street Tree Advisory Committee's recommendation to deny the removal of the Nichols willow leaf peppermint at 2514 Castillo Street.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, that passes unanimously. And we're on to 4B1.
Chair Longstreet and Commissioners, at 425 West Los Olivos Street, there is a white mulberry tree in the front yard. It has lifted the front sidewalk. The patio area has like flagstones to make up a non-solid patio, if you may. It's lifted those as well. The applicant would like to remove the tree primarily for the damage that it's causing, but he noted that the small oak tree, city oak tree in front of it, could benefit from some extra light if it were removed. The committee determined that that would be the case. It would receive some extra light, but there is also an adjacent planter in the front yard farther away from this tree that could support a replacement tree. Their recommendation is to approve the removal on the condition that a tree that can achieve 25 feet in height be planted as a replacement tree, and they commented that there was space in that other location for another tree.
Okay, we do have a public speaker for this item. Are there any questions of staff at this time? And I will open public comment. Michelle Carbone.
Thank you, Madam Commissioner and Commission, Chairwoman and Commission. My name is Michelle Carbone. I'm Jim's wife. He is out of the country and asked me to speak on his behalf. We're very happy that you're willing to agree that the tree does need to be removed. We were just questioning whether we could have the opportunity to decide a smaller tree in that location. It is our plan, in keeping with the neighborhood, to replace the picket fence, which there are several picket fences in that area, and put a small eye-level hedge to provide privacy from the street and for our tenants who live in that front house. We were thinking something that had a less invasive root system. We are working with a local landscaper. I personally would prefer some sort of citrus tree, which provides the benefit of fruit for people living in those two houses on that property. And we just hope that you would consider allowing us to make either a decision with our landscaper, with the hedge and plant materials, or at least not put such a large tree requirement in that area, as that oak tree will get much larger. Thank you.
Thank you.
Also, one other thing. We're on the street in the last couple of days. There are like 5 oak trees, the big one, and 4 more on the street that are either died in the last month or massively attacked by those moths and worms. So I would suggest that your tree people take a look at it, because it was kind of shocking to see how they had turned around in the last month. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, with that, I will close public comment, and it's back to the commission. Mr. Cavazos.
So, Mr. Day, how long would it take a tree to achieve 25 feet? I mean, obviously that's pretty broad, but assuming that they bought a reasonably sized tree, how long would it take, could it take?
Chair Longstreet, Commissioner Cavazos, as you mentioned, it's really a broad question. Let me answer it in this way. Trees grow at different rates, and it's their natural habit to do that. There's industry research that has shown that the smaller a tree is when you plant it, the sooner it becomes established in that space and the quicker it grows. In fact, just as an example, we typically plant 15-gallon sized trees because it's large enough to resist vandalism, but still small enough that it can establish fairly quickly. The research showed that within 1 year's time, the 15-gallon tree established and outgrew the 24-inch box. So it relates to the speed that the tree grows and the size that it's planted and the conditions it gets. But a moderately growing tree could get to be full-sized at 25 feet in 20 years.
Thank you. Other questions? Ms. Clark.
How tall does a regular non-dwarf citrus species get generally, like an orange tree? That 10 feet?
Commissioner Long, or Chair Longstreet and Commissioner Clark, non-dwarf citrus trees tend to be about 25 to 40 feet tall. Dwarfs, depending on the species, are somewhere between 10 and about 20 feet.
Other questions? On comments? went by the site today, and I was a little concerned about the size of the yard and a tree. And it's a small front yard, it's not expansive, and that oak is right in front. I would be inclined to support the request of the homeowner to plant a tree of their choice. Yeah.
I think based on the recommendation, they would be able to plant a citrus tree that could achieve 25 feet. Is that correct?
Chair Longstreet and Commissioner Cohen, the, excuse me, if they planted a non-dwarf citrus, it would meet the committee's recommendation.
Okay, based on that, I would like to move for approval, or I would like to, approve the committee's removal of the applicant tree and replace it with a tree that can achieve the 25 feet in height.
Is there a second to that motion? Okay. Any discussion? Ms. Armbruster.
I guess I would be more inclined to support what you said and allow the homeowner to have a tree of their choosing in size rather than have the requirement of the 25 feet.
Okay. Any other comments?
Just a small comment. When the Street Tree Advisory Committee was looking at the property, one of their concerns was that without that tree, it would look pretty stark and barren. But I don't think that they knew that you were planning on putting in a hedge and doing some other landscaping and repairs to the front. They just didn't want it to look like a barren, blighted expanse of broken flagstone, which it wouldn't. I think that's a little bit relevant. And I agree with Bibi, it's a pretty small space to have a giant tree. As much as I would love to see another giant tree, I'm not sure if that's the spot for it.
Well, we do have a motion on the floor and a second. Do we want to vote on that one and see how it goes? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Nay. Okay, so it did not pass, and would we like to try a second motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the request for removal without the limitation of the tree size.
Do we want a replacement tree of the homeowner's choice?
We do want a replacement tree of the homeowner's choice.
Okay. Is there a second to that motion? And the motion was to concur with removal and to allow the homeowner to choose the tree, replacement tree. Second. We have a motion and a second. Discussion. Okay, let's vote on that. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, it passes 5-1. Thank you. So, I will say any decision of this body is appealable within 10 days to City Council. Thank you. All righty, so we have completed our trees today, and that brings us to the director's report.
Chair Longstreet and Commissioners, just a few items before we move on to your next business item. First of all, I want to let the Commission know that our department is being recommended for funding. It'll be on the Council agenda next Tuesday in the evening session for a community development block grant of $135,000 for the development of a new playground at the Municipal Tennis Center, and then also $8,400 for our Arts Alliance program. Commission received a presentation from Ricardo Venegas on that program, and I'm going to remember that I think it was April because it was a meeting that I was unable to attend, and I was sorry because I knew it was a great presentation. So that'll enable that program to continue to flourish in the next year, and we're very thankful for those funds. Another project that we're working on that you'll hear more about at your May meeting is in collaboration with the co-trustees for Parma Park. Parma Park benefits from having trust funds that are allocated for its maintenance every year. We worked with the co-trustees to define a sustainable trail plan that we would implement at the park for the park's over 5 miles of trails. That work effort has begun in earnest, and we had 25 people at a community meeting last week. We've done an online survey, so we're moving forward with it, and you'll hear more about that in the future. And then also, you had on your summary of council actions, but also in the director's report, we've applied for a grant for up to about just over $1 million, although the reality is it's probably closer to $750,000, a housing-related parks grant program. George Thompson and the project management group put it together. And I tell you this because it actually is one of those very unique grant programs. You have to document all of the affordable housing that's been created over a period of time and actually produce a big old binder that shows where, how many units, the value of those units, and based on what the city's done to support the development of affordable housing, you get a certain number of points that go towards a potential per capita grant. The Cabrillo Ballpark renovation projects in a location that would be eligible for those grant funds. So we're hopeful that if those funds get awarded, we will be fully funded for that project, and that project will move forward in September. You might ask, fully funded? We did lose some funding in the last budget cycle, and we've also started working on the access improvements for the restroom, which has kicked the project cost up just a little bit, but we're hopeful that we get that grant. It's a range between $750,000 and $1 million because there's also a bonus that we might qualify for, but it's not up to us to decide that. So hopefully that'll come through. And then I think that's it. We do have another work session coming up in April because the budget will be presented to the City Council on Tuesday, April 18th. Your work session's on the 19th. And then you'll have a budget meeting on the 26th. So more on that later. I would like to take the opportunity thanking commissioners for going on our site tour. We very much missed Commissioner Martinez-Cohen, but we're going to catch up with her as we can through the next couple of months. Glad that you could spend the time. We certainly enjoyed it and thought it was a great use of everyone's time, so thank you.
Questions of Ms. Zachary? I have one. Our youth employment did not get funded by CDBG. Is that correct?
Chair Longstreet, that's correct. It didn't score high enough.
And that program employs quite a few young people for a pretty reasonable, it's our piece with other funds coming in. Will there be a way to backfill that so we keep kids employed this summer?
Chair Longstreet and commissioners, I don't know if Judith McCaffrey would be better able to answer this, but we do fund part of that program through our general fund allocation. Okay. So it's not like it's going away.
I was just sad to hear that. I think it's a truly valuable program and always fighting for funding. And so happy to hear about the grant funding for both the park and Cabrillo Ball Field. I think those are necessary programs, so thank you. Okay, any other questions? Mr. Lesnar Buxton.
Miss, I'm intrigued about the $750,000 grant. Can you explain as part of this grant for more affordable housing?
Chair Longstreet and Commissioner Lesnar Buxton, this is a program that's administered through the Department of Housing and Community Development. And it's funds that can only be used for parks and recreation projects that benefit the community. It's based on the work effort of the city to develop affordable housing units. So it's not just units like we develop, but it's also the housing authorities' units. Those numbers are reported on an annual basis by our community development department, and so you get credits for that. And based on that, you get a per capita allocation. we have wanted to apply for these funds for a long time, and the right project hasn't presented itself in the right paperwork, and it's a huge amount of work to pull together this application. The actual narrative isn't that complicated, but all the detail. It's something that cities and counties, I believe counties, are eligible for.
So
Does that help?
basically, it's a reward for, and to provide amenities for affordable housing projects.
Would it provide any more affordable housing?
Oh, that's your question. I apologize, Commissioner Lesnar Buxton. No, it's for Parks and Recreation purposes. Yes. So it helps us serve the public that's now living in that housing. And we do actually demonstrate the relationship of the park improvements and the location of the park improvements to the improved housing or the provided housing. That makes sense. So not every park in our system would be eligible.
Thank you. Interesting. Interesting. Okay, well, that concludes the director's report, and we are now to item 6, the Arroyo Borough Open Space. And this is an item that's for action.
Chair Longstreet and Commissioners, Aaron Markey, who's a restoration planner with the Creeks Division, is going to do today's presentation.
Thank you for coming.
Good afternoon, Chair Longstreet and Commissioners. Thank you for having me. I'm here to give an update on the Arroyo Borough Open Space and to recommend the proposed rezoning of this park and designation of the park category of open space. So just some background information. This is the open space park at the end of Allen Road that the city acquired last March from the Trust for Public Lands. And the acquisition included 3 separate parcels, but they're all adjoining. So there's the large 14.7 acre parcel here and 2 adjacent smaller parcels, this triangle to the north and this long skinny parcel at the end of Allen Road. So grant funding was received as part of the acquisition, and this grant funding came with the stipulation that the property be placed into a conservation easement. And this conservation easement limits future development of the property as well as prohibits any future use that would impair both the conservation value of the property or limit or inhibit public access to the site. This property is one of several large open spaces in the watershed, and it includes about 1,600 linear feet of creekside habitat, and therefore is a real resource and opportunity to do meaningful creek restoration and watershed improvement projects. But it also is an open space that is a resource for recreation for the community. So the Creeks Division has been working to develop a restoration project for the site. As part of that process, we've been working with some consulting engineers as well as outreaching to the community to get input on what they would like to see done. In September, as part of Creek Week, the Santa Barbara Urban Creeks Council held an event out at the park, and it focused on the watershed, but also a discussion on the potential restoration opportunities of this property. As well as in October, the Creeks Division and Park and Recreation staff hosted 2 separate community meetings out at the park, both with environmental stakeholder groups and neighboring property owners and residents to solicit feedback on any proposed restoration efforts or future park maintenance activities. So the Creeks Division last August started working with consulting engineers from Waterways Consulting to develop conceptual designs for what a restoration project could look like for this area. They've currently completed extensive topographic surveys and hydrologic analysis, and we're expecting to have some draft concept designs in early May, at which point we will do another round of community outreach and present those draft concept designs to stakeholders as well as the Creeks Advisory Committee. So before us today, the city is currently updating its zoning ordinance, And as part of this comprehensive update, we're proposing changing the zoning for these 3 parcels to represent their current use and allowed practices. So two of the parcels are currently zoned SP3, which is the Veronica Meadows specific plan, and one of the parcels is zoned E3, which is single residential units. And we are proposing that we change that as part of the overall new city zoning ordinance to Parks and Recreation. In addition, 2 of the further south parcels are within the coastal zone, and so they have a coastal overlay zone, and those will be designated P-R/CC for that. In addition, the new park is we're proposing, to designate the park category as open space. Open space is defined as land that is intended to be protected and managed as a natural environment with passive recreation use and minimal development. So the park's current use and our future improvements will be consistent with this. And examples of other open space parks include Palmer Park and the Douglas Family Preserve. And so as part of the Santa Barbara Municipal Code, it's established that both the Parks and Recreation Commission and the Planning Commission shall make this recommendation on the designation of any new park facility or change in park category. Therefore, staff is recommending that the Parks and Rec Commission recommend to City Council the adoption of the proposed rezone and designation of the park as an open space park. So our next steps, the Planning Commission has already reviewed the new zoning ordinance, and they will consider the open space designation in April, on the April 13th. And it's anticipated that the new ordinance committee will consider the new zoning ordinance in April, and that City Council will consider the new zoning ordinance sometime in July. In addition, over the next several months, the Creeks Division will continue to work with our consultants and outreach to the community members about the further development of a creek restoration project and future park maintenance activities. With that, any questions?
Yes, are there any questions? We do have a public speaker on this item. Questions? Yes, Ms. Clark.
Could you define or make a short list of what activities would be permitted under passive recreation and what activities would not be permitted under passive recreation?
Chair Longstreet and Commissioner Clark, Attachment 2 actually has a list of the allowed uses, and Aaron may be more familiar with the details of the conservation easement, but the conservation easement limits the type of development, which is completely consistent with the open space category. So, for example, in terms of trails, but there would be no buildings, no lighting, that kind of thing.
I guess more specifically then my question would be if people were riding their bikes at Elings Park and wanted to tootle over onto this property, would they be permitted? Would that be passive, non-motorized use?
Yes.
Of the space? Okay.
That would be allowed.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? All right. We will open public comment. Dan McCarter.
Madam Chair and Honorable Commissioners, I'm Dan McCarter with Friends of Arroyo Borough. We support this open space designation, except we have one concern, and the designation allows for parking and lighting, and that's about it, which is, okay. But one of the things it doesn't allow for is community gardening. And I hesitate on this regard because I'm not looking at gardening in the classic sense of growing tomatoes, but we look at doing some community gardening in the sense of restoration gardening, which is a type of gardening. Basically, that's hand weeding and growing native plants to displace invasive weeds. So, and then also, in another gardening sense, allowing for a CWPP, which is a Community Wildfire Protection Plan in the Las Positas Valley. a plan that would include a fire-wise gardening techniques for creating defensible space. So while we support this designation, we'd like to be assured that we would be allowed to do this type of gardening activity. Thank you.
Thank you. I would assume we consider, when I look at the term community gardens, I consider our community gardens where people have individual spaces to garden in. Is that correct? That's our definition of community garden?
Chair Longstreet, yes, it's actually defined in the zoning ordinance what constitutes a community garden, as well as in the under the PR zone and then in the residential areas as a space set aside for people to grow food for their personal consumption. I would add that one of the key projects in the Creeks Division now and into the next fiscal year will be creating restoration plans for the creek and the creek areas, and as part of that, a restoration planting plan will be developed.
Thank you. So I think I don't see any conflict in that area myself. So questions, comments? It's exciting to finally to get to rezone another piece of property to open space. We haven't done this in a while, since Douglas Family Preserve. So it is exciting. I think this conservation, the documents will preclude some of the issues we've run into at the Douglas Family Preserve, so I'm happy to see that. So with that, I would entertain a motion to rezone.
Chair Longstreet, I will make a motion. I agree this is a great project. This is actually one of the first items that I was part of on the commission, and I think we would all agree that it's pretty unique to have this opportunity, so I'm happy to make the motion that we recommend the parcels be rezoned as requested.
Seconded.
Do we need all of that?
Do you need the actual zones?
Well, Chair Longstreet, just the rezoning and the designation as well.
Yeah, it's in our...
So rezoned and designated as open space.
But do we need it? Okay, we need to recommend the City Council that the Arroyo Borough open space be rezoned from SP-9, SP-9/SD3, and E3SD3 to PNR and PNR/CZ. Is that correct?
That's
yeah,
yeah.
That's why you bring your
I will
packet
amend,
to the meeting.
I will amend my motion to include the
and that we recommend to City Council that the park be designated open space as defined by the Santa Barbara
I got
Municipal
those
Code.
open space right. I got that one right. So
Okay.
I will amend my motion to
Okay,
include those.
and we have a second to that motion? Okay. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you very much, and this is great. So we come to item 7, the 2017 summer camp marketing. Thank you.
Chair Longstreet and commissioners, I like doing these introductions. This is going to be a really neat presentation. We've been doing a lot of work on our marketing. So both Mark Sewell and Summers Case are going to present this information to you, and hopefully you've had time to peruse our website. If not, you'll be able to know where to go. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Welcome.
Chair Longstreet and Commissioners, Mark Sewell, I'm the Business Manager for the Parks and Recreation Department, and I have with me Summers Case, the Marketing Coordinator. And so, yes, we're delighted to be able to present what are we doing with regards to our department's efforts to market our summer camps. And start with what are the summer camps? They are very key to the department's success. They really are the face and the brand for many people in terms of what Parks and Recreation means across the country and definitely within Santa Barbara. We serve youth aged from 3 to 17, and we have a very broad and varied subject matter. And to just give you some context, last year, and we define summer as pretty much the school holidays, we served almost 7,000 registrants and generated nearly $900,000 in revenue for the department. 43 camps generated that, and about 400 sessions are what we're proposing for next year, this year, 2017. 43 different types of activities, of which there'll be 400 or more sessions. So the approach to marketing is that we look at it on a regular basis, but typically we have a season for the summer, and then when we get through the end of it and everyone can catch their breath, we try to review what worked and what can we improve, and look at individual camp and program performance. And wherever possible, we look to try and expand the ones which are proving very popular. As you know, some of our facilities and our resources are limited, so therefore we have only a certain number of people and that we can actually get through certain programs. And so we do what we can to try and grow those where possible. We also look at what's hot, what's new, what are other people doing, what's the latest trend, and try to get some of those into our portfolio and give it a go. They don't always work, but often they do. We seek through surveys and any other avenues online and social media feedback from our customers and try to hear what are we doing well and what can we improve on and how can we then play that back and make the next year even better. We are increasingly building our quality of our online resources. We realize that where everyone's glued to their phones more and more these days, and we're also seeing now that we have the millennial parents whose children are now entering the age where they've started to be interested and want to do the activities that we can provide them. And then, of course, we plan how we're going to tell people about what we're doing and how we're going to prioritize that and what do we want to do for those people who are on their iPhones and those people who perhaps aren't so keen on the iPhone, and we try to meet the needs of each of those through traditional and digital marketing. And so new for this year, and I'll have Summers explain it in a bit more detail because she's the genius behind it all, is the new mobile-friendly website that we've launched, which has been very successful in only a very short time. We've got some new programs. So we've got some chess. It may sound like an old-school thing, but these things come around. So you can play chess this summer. You can learn to swim in half-day camps. We have a number of swimming pools. And we've also got some language camps, which would be fantastic. If anyone wants to learn to speak in an English accent, then I'm available. We're looking to expand Nature Camp. That's possibly our biggest, most popular camp and sells out in minutes. It's like Bon Jovi tickets, I would imagine. And so we've actually expanded that this year. We've added some extra sessions, and so we're able to provide more of the community with more Nature Camp. And I think one of the other things we've heard loud and clear from the community is that they need more convenience. Working parents particularly have a challenge in terms of just a morning camp or dropping off at 9 a.m. when they need to be at work earlier and things like that. So we've listened to that and we've expanded our extended care offer. So now you can drop off early, you can pick up late, or you can do both. And also, the other piece of innovation this year, which is new, is a land and sea camp based on the Cabrillo Boulevard there, whereby irrespective of which morning camp you're doing, you can then have your child go and attend the land and sea camp so you can make a full day. And for some of those morning camps, we're able to provide free transportation. And so therefore, a parent can drop off early, have their child in a really fun and engaging morning camp, know that they're going to be looked after, transported safely to the waterfront, and then have another exciting camp in the afternoon and then pick them up. And that would be all from one location, drop off and pick up. So we think that we're listening to people and we're hopeful that that's going to bring some results. And so then one of the key ways we're getting that message across, as I mentioned, is the new mobile-friendly website. It's our central hub for all of our information. It's now far more searchable and intuitive when you want to actually say, it's nice to know that we do 43 different camps, but I've got a 6-year-old. What's available for a 6-year-old? You can now search on our site very easily by just age 6. Or, hey, I'm going to be on vacation, I just need this week. You can do all of those kind of searches or interest and all that kind of stuff. It then links through to our online booking, and it's a reliable source for all the camp letters and all the details that parents need to know: what time, where, what do I need to bring, what's going to happen, who do I need to call. All of those types of things are on there. And the intent is to have all of our marketing materials, be they online or in print, draw people to this website as the single point of focus. And so with that, I'll hand over to someone who can sort of tell you a bit more about how cool it is.
Hi, I'm Summers Case, Marketing Coordinator for Parks and Recreation, and I'm here to tell you about our new summer camp website, which you just heard a little bit about. So first, a little backstory for you. This isn't our first summer camp website. In 2005, we set up a standalone site, our first one, which we called Summer Fun. It provided a great online resource for parents. At that time, we still had a full printed activity guide that we still mailed out to people. And we had the same online registration system that we have now, but we needed something to fill in the gaps in our web presence. So Summer Fun was a useful tool, but it was a little bit time consuming and difficult to update. You needed special skills to do it. And as mobile devices became much more prevalent in terms of browsing the internet, it didn't really perform there either, because that was fine in 2005. So now that up to 50% of our visitors are on mobile devices and tablets, we really needed something that was mobile friendly. So we built on our Summer Fun site successes. This year we built a new mobile friendly site that is much more user friendly, and it's actually also far easier to update and expand. So I'm going to show you around a little bit, but if you'd like to follow along at home, the address is sbparksandrec.org. So on the left here is our new homepage, and then it's sort of blown up along the side, little parts of it so you can see. So you'll notice when you visit the site that there are a few new features right at the top in the menus, if you can see that. Thank you. And so users can click to view all of our summer camps on one page. They can view part day, full day, or as Mark mentioned, they can search by the child's age or which week the camp is taking place. And that is really new for us. We set this up manually with a system of categories and tags so we could make browsing a little bit more intuitive for parents. We also have a featured camp area that makes it easy for us to highlight new camps or camps that aren't quite full yet. So clicking on a featured camp would take you to an individual camp page. Thank you. So there is also on our homepage a how to register area with links to our printable summer camp guide. That's the one everyone's used to from past years. Instructions for first-timers or customers who need to be reminded that they can register online or by phone or in person at Parks and Rec offices like the Carrillo Recreation Center. Someone who's new to Parks and Rec activities might want to know what's happening with having two prices listed for each camp. So we put a little box in the footer, which is what you're seeing on the lower right here, to explain resident and non-resident pricing. That's visible everywhere on the site on every page, because we had a little bit of feedback about what does this mean, and we couldn't, in an activity guide situation, really spare the space to put a footer, but on the web it worked really well. So we hope that will eliminate some confusion for people. So leaving the home page, let's look at one of those individual camp pages that I just mentioned. This one is for Little Shredders, which is our skateboarding camp for 4 to 6-year-olds. The camp page is where you'd find all the camp information that you'd find in our old activity guide, plus reminders about extended care, if that's available, or land and sea camp, which Mark just told you about. We also added maps of the camp location and drop-off and pick-up location if that's different than the camp location, as in the case of Nature Camp, and with a Google map and printed address, plus a link to a page where we explain parking and drop-off info. As summer gets a little bit closer, we will add important documents for parents, as Mark mentioned, sort of those orientation letters and weekly camp activities, and for certain camps that have a lot of field trips, or also for Santa Barbara Junior Lifeguards, there are some extra waivers and trip forms. So parents can just return to their camp page and find everything they need, which is a great resource for them, and in two ways. One, just because they can find all of their information, but also maybe as they come back and browse, they might find another camp they want to sign up for. So at the bottom of the page, you'll see those little white boxes outlined in blue. So those are post tags. So the way to use those you're probably familiar with, but I'll just explain. So if a user's on this Little Shredders page, but they need a skateboarding camp for a little bit of an older child, or they want to know what other camps feature skateboarding, they can click on that skateboarding tag and see a list of everything. And that will pop up for them, for instance, our skate camp for 7 to 12-year-olds. So the most prominent part of the page, which is why I made it purple, is our call to action Register Now button. And so in the same way that our old Summer Fun site was a little bit of a link for parents so that they didn't have to navigate our sometimes confusing online registration system. At least its search function can be confusing. We just link directly to where they need to go, so they can just click and go right to Little Shredders. So the last thing about these individual camp pages that I want to tell you about is social sharing, which is my personal favorite part. Proper social sharing, which means you get these nice little boxes, see on the right, with the right photo and a headline and a summary excerpt and the right keywords, that kind of thing, is something we haven't had before, either with the city website or with our previous summer fun site, because of course when that was first designed, social sharing wasn't really a thing, at least not like this. So if you're a member of the public who wants to, say, tell a friend that you have just registered for Little Shredders, you can just either paste the URL to the page into the Facebook window or whatever social outlet you're wanting to use, or you can use those links that Mark indicated. And it's really easy. It's a huge help to us as well, because since registration launch, we've been sharing our camps on our official social media accounts, and it is so much easier. If you visit facebook.com/SBParksandRec, I made you a post, and you can see what our Little Shredders posts would look like shared, and how easy it is to comment, like, or share that yourself. So this may seem like a tiny thing, but it's huge for us, and it will allow us to be far more flexible in our marketing efforts. So what we haven't done yet, but are working on, and this site allows us to do, is putting together custom landing pages based on customer interests. We already have things broken out by schedule in terms of full day, part day, or sports versus dance, that kind of thing. But what we really want to get into is researching our customer demographics and finding out what interests sort of stick together and what they value, and making pages tailored to that, and then using those, say, in email marketing or sharing for them. So we have a lot of functionality here in general that we haven't had before. We're still adding in more manually. Our current recreation management system, that's our online registration system, doesn't really allow us to truly integrate the site. And the site itself still requires some regular updates, sort of if it's not hooked into our database because of that, but it is so much easier, and taking this leap has definitely improved our overall web presence. So as Mark mentioned, this is our one true source of summer camp information. We're trying to get away from having so many different moving parts, all of which need to be updated if something changes, and could leave a customer with a printed item that maybe has the wrong time on it if something does change. So this is our hub. So we are still in a lot of places. We're all over the web. We're doing print, we're doing traditional advertising, but we're driving people here, and that'll be more reliable for them. So overall, I'm happy to tell you that sbparksandrec.org is already outperforming both our old summer fun site and the online activity guide. And it's also the #1 way people are being directed to our online registration system. 70% of our visits last week came directly from the new website, which is a big deal. So overall, I think that we are already providing a useful resource to our customers. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there questions? Mr. Cavazos?
There is more of the presentation if you want it.
You
can ask questions if they're relevant for right now.
Well, since I have the floor, I'll just ask for the website again, if you could put out that there. The more you can get that out, that would be great.
Chair Longstreet and Commissioner Cavazos, that is sbparksandrec.org. Thank you for asking.
Okay.
sbparksandrec.org.
Mm-hmm.
Got it.
That's correct. sbparksandrec.org.
We could do this for an hour, you know.
What was it? Say it back.
Okay.
So, may I continue?
Yes.
Thank you so much. So there's not much left, don't worry. So the customer convenience of us surfing online when you want to, after the kids have gone to bed and all that kind of stuff, that's what we're really trying to focus on and make it easier for people to want to trade with us. Oftentimes the city can be somewhat challenging to deal with, and we're trying to knock down as many of those barriers as we can. So to just label the point again a little bit that, we've got longer camp days now available for busy parents. Extended care options are far more available, and we have the land and sea camp, so people can mix and match. All right, and so you know you're dropping your child off at this time in the morning and you're picking them up at this time in the afternoon, and they're just going to have an awesome day. So results to date. Some have shared that we're already seeing that people are driving from our website to the registration page, and our communication strategy is therefore working. We've launched the website. It was live 2 weeks ago. We preceded that with a postcard mailer to targeted addresses in Santa Barbara for people who used to and have traded with us in the past, to tell them, hey, it's summer camp time again. I mean, everyone's clearly doing that who's in this market, but we were trying to give us a check, have a look at us. We've been on social media reminding people about the general, hey, we've got 45 camps and programs, and also, as you've seen, targeting specific activities. And we've been reaching out to our marketing list. So we've had the best opening week ever. We're up 20%. That's pretty good. We hope it continues. Haven't quite got the room to be 20% every single week, but it would be wonderful if we had. What a good problem that would be to have if we were started to be full in every single one of our camps. So for the future, what are we going to do? Well, we're going to continue to analyze what we're doing and look to timely promote some of those programs and camps, as you saw in terms of featured camps, if we're seeing there's opportunity to find more spaces. There is the independent camp guide, which we think is a useful resource for the community, and so we've looked to try and launch within a reasonable time frame of that, so people can have a look at us, and also we'll be in the camp guide, and because we know there's lots of options for people, and we want to really shine towards the top there. We're going to be mailing the guide for those people who still like to have something paper and that they can work through and do all of that kind of stuff. And we're going to be, at various community events. We're going to be at Earth Day. We're going to have some fun activities for people to come and do with their kids, and people there to answer questions and let you know what's going on. And I think the most exciting thing that we're going to be doing in the next 12 months is that we are going to be finally upgrading our booking engine, and that's going to be another huge leap towards our interface with our customers. We're working on a booking engine which is almost 20 years old. And so while we're trying to bolt on these different websites and add-ons, you still get to that point where it kind of has to stop a little bit and it gets clunky. That will go away, and that will be another step forward to convenience and ease of dealing with us. And finally, we're going to be asking the opinion of our customers. How does it go? And how's the quality of the camp? How's the interface? How did it work? Let us know. We'd like to improve. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Great presentation. It's quite a difference from 30 years ago when everybody lined up with their beach chairs on Ortega and Laguna Street on Saturday morning to register their kids for nature camp. Okay, Mr. Cavazos, back to you. Okay.
What's the website again? No. So I think this is great. While you guys were going, I went in and I logged in and started taking a look on my phone. I think the layout's beautiful. I mean, I do a presentation about millennial applicants and recruiters and how you go after them, and they're in a different world. They live on their phones or on their iPads. The joke that I often use is when I call my kids to dinner, I don't do it anymore. I just kind of text them. So going through the interface was awesome. I could see a huge success. And to your point, where it started to bog down is when let me register. And then I get taken. So the sooner you guys can get that booking engine in there, I think that would be great too, and just continue the great work that you guys have been doing.
Okay. Mr. Lesnar Buxton.
Wow, thank you so much for your work. It's great. One suggestion I have is, I don't know if you can do it for this summer or probably next, is put access information with each camp road, how accessible it is to students with mobility devices, and kind of a feel for day-to-day activities and how accessible they are, because parents look for that when they call my office and other offices, how accessible it is to children with disabilities and special health care needs.
Chair Longstreet and Commissioner Jacob Lesnar Buxton. So you bring up a good point. We could certainly increase our marketing in that area. I would just add that we have a very vibrant, successful inclusion program, and in essence, anybody can participate in our programs as long as we can provide a reasonable accommodation. So we get registrations. Our team goes through about 800 registrations every summer. They figure out how we can include that person in our regular recreation programming so they have the same experience as everybody else and enjoy a full camp day. So we could certainly improve the how do people get to the location and some of the accessibility features. But as a department, I feel like we are, cutting edge above other agencies in California and how we provide inclusion to participants that need it to participate in our programs and our camps.
Chair Longstreet and Commissioner Lesnar Buxton, I also would hazard a guess, and perhaps Mr. Hanna can confirm this. We're very well known for our inclusion program, so people do know to come to Parks and Recreation if they have a need that they want to see how we can accommodate to participate.
Yes. Thank you. Okay. Other questions or comments? Ms. Clark?
Oh, I just think your whole website is genius. I wish they had SB Parks and Rec when I was in the camp market. I used to sit there with my calendar and all of my children's friends' parents' summer vacation calendars, and we'd be on the phone with all the calendars and on email back when everything was AOL and Earthlink, and we would be trying to find the right fit, and you nailed it.
Good.
Thank you.
It looks really good. I just can't wait till my baby's old enough. I went immediately to see what 3-year-olds can do, even though she's only 10 months. It looks good. I would never use a paper calendar either, so it looks great. I do everything on my phone. I'm one of those people that you're talking about.
Thanks. Do you have any comments? Thank you. Excellent to see this progress. It's great. Thank you very much. Good luck. I hope all camps are full by May. Thank you. What? All right. Okay, Ms. Zachary. Item 8.
Are we ready?
Yep, we're
Chair
ready.
Longstreet and Commissioners, with this presentation, I'd just like to, talk a little bit about our infrastructure needs. The Commission had an opportunity to do a site visit to some key areas, particularly some of our more historic sites that we've had in our system for quite some time. And you received a presentation on our capital improvement program in December. You will be hearing more again about what we think will be recommended for capital funding for next year at your meeting in April. This is really more looking broadly back at what Parks and Recreation needs include. And what I'd like to do is sort of start with a little bit of history. In 1853, the first official city map was drawn up, and at that time there were 8 public plazas identified on that map. For various reasons, different ones were abandoned without going into that history, 50 years. The 1903 map showed 3 public plazas, and those essentially are our most historic parks in Santa Barbara: Alameda Plaza, Plaza Veracruz, and Plaza Del Mar. The Parks Department dates from 1902, so we did have our centennial in 2002. It's now 2017. It'll be a while before we get to 150 years. However, I think our recreation side of our department will get to 50 years fairly soon. The recreation department started with our Board of Recreation Commissioners in 1929. So Santa Barbara has a really rich history of parks and recreation. The 2 different departments were merged in 1977. There was an initial sort of a merge, and then there was a super department in between, and then ultimately we became what we are today. In fact, your commission, and Chair Longstreet will remember this, at one time the Board of Parks Commissioners met first at 4 o'clock, and then the Board of Recreation Commissioners met after that, and then we changed, the charter got changed, and now it is the Parks and Recreation Commission.
Actually, we had 3 agendas. We had the parks, and then we had Parks and Recreation, and we met in the middle as a 7-member board, and then 2 people went off, and then we had Recreation. And so every meeting we had 3 agendas.
So we're streamlined now. And that, I believe that streamlining, that charter amendment, certainly was in the last 15 years, because I remember when it occurred. So how did we get to all the wonderful resources that we have? Private individuals gave us their land or bought land and then gave it to the city. Through development agreements, if you look at the history, where subdivisions were created, houses were built, there were parkland set aside. Community fundraising, we know we've had that experience in a number of different locations, and community activism as well. Government bonds play a big history in Santa Barbara's acquisition of land for a public open space. Special funds as well, although we don't have the redevelopment agency anymore. Chase Palm Park, the expansion, really was purchased through the redevelopment agency, or at least developed that way. And then property transfers. We have had land from the federal government transfer to the city, and then we've also had where actual oceanfront beach land has been established. The State Lands Commission has then deeded sand, essentially beach land, to the city. The growth in our resources from 1853 to 2016, that was our last open space acquisition for the Arroyo Borough open space. And as a result, today we have 60 parks and sports facilities for a community that's 90,000 and 18.2 square miles. So we are very rich. We have community parks, neighborhood parks, open space parks, passive parks, beach parks, and we have regional parks that are operated by others. We consider those part of Santa Barbara's parks and recreation resources. Some of them are operated on city-owned land. They just are operated by others. We have a golf course dating from the 50s. You know about our swimming pools, tennis and pickleball courts, volleyball courts. We have 5 dedicated sports fields. Clearly, people use some of our open spaces in our parks to kick a ball around, but when you think of planned sports, we have 5. Lawn bowls, playgrounds, and a skate park. A lot of things that we manage. Your staff report includes our updated resources inventory, which really goes into more detail of each park designation and where they're located. Recreation centers, we provide neighborhood services at 3 buildings. We have a number of rental facilities that not only are for private events, but they're also used for community events and public events, and they're open and accessible to the public. Any number of community events, information events occur throughout the city's facilities. And then we have our pools, and we didn't stop and look at Los Baños, but you'll be hearing more about a refurb project. Hopefully we'll get funded for next year. But we went by the Ortega Pool, Oak Park, and then our ideas for what to do with converting the West Beach wading pool. Urban forest, as a Parks and Recreation Department, sometimes it lives in a Parks and Recreation Department or a Parks Department. Often it lives in a Public Works Department. It also has, our urban forest has a very rich history, starting in the late 1880s, where Santa Barbara residents brought different species to Santa Barbara and began planting. Early 1900s, when you really look at the history, the Parks Commission developed its first official street tree list and designation in 1914. Now we're operating on one that was updated in 1968, but we do update it. This commission does it when you change a designation. And today we have almost 33,000 trees that we might touch at any time during any year, and almost 30,000 trees in public open spaces and green spaces. So you think of all of our open space parks. That's part of our public urban forest. We count our parkways and medians because those are also green spaces, sort of urban refuges from streets that we are responsible for maintaining throughout the city. How do we maintain all these things? Well, that's the challenge that we face today, and we've often faced over the course of the history of this department. The general fund provides a little bit of funding. Historically, it's been less than $1 million a year. In recent years, it's been a little bit more, but that's for all general fund departments. So Each year, we sit and we meet and we talk about what the city's priorities are. Parks and Recreation has often benefited significantly from those general fund allocations because we manage so many publicly accessible spaces for Parks and Recreation. We've also, over the years, been very successful in getting grants from government, whether they're bond acts, federal programs. The county has the Coastal Resources Enhancement Fund that we've benefited from a number of times, and then also there's state coastal access funds. I mentioned earlier special funds. The former redevelopment agency has helped support upgrades and improvements to a number of our parks. We don't have it anymore, so that's one of the challenges that we face today. I mentioned the 6-year capital improvement plan. That's our vehicle for really identifying our long-term needs. It's 6 years, but really it's kind of everything. And we update it every 2 years. We present it to you every year, but really comprehensively every 2 years. And we have 38 general fund projects that are around total about $113 million. To be honest, it could be 140 because in some cases we don't have super detailed cost estimates. We just know order of magnitude based on our experience. When we look at sort of core infrastructure needs for just reinvesting in our existing parks and facilities, and you carve out some of our sort of bigger picture wish lists like a new aquatics facility, there's $67 million that on any day of the week we could be investing in our parks and recreation facilities. And it seems overwhelming, but really it's not that hard to tally it all up. When we look at our renovation for Cabrillo Ballpark, it's going to be over $1 million. And we're not putting a basketball court in. So if we added that in, it'd be more. So it really does take a lot. That said, when we do these reinvestment projects, we go in and we try to get everything done so we don't have to go back there for quite some time. So we've identified a number of high priorities if additional funds were ever generated in the future. They include really focusing on our community buildings. We've been working on developing design plans for the Louise Lowry Davis Center. We took our commission to the Carrillo Gym. It has a lot of needs. The West Side Neighborhood Center, we've been patching it and fixing things, but ultimately at some point we're really going to have to take a good hard look at that site. It's an old school site. So at some point, if we really think about the community's needs, and I'm thinking 30, 50 years out, not just next year, not just 2 years from now, reinvesting in that site could have a lot of advantages. Municipal Tennis Center, Dwight Murphy Ballfield has huge potential for looking at artificial sports turf and universally accessible playground. I mean, it's a big piece of property that we have. Ortega Park swimming pool in need of major overhaul and perhaps full-scale rebuild in some cases. We talked about the West Beach wading pool. And then I just want to bring up our historic parks. It came up as part of our site visit. Even though we don't have a lot of development in a lot of those parks, we have infrastructure that's crumbling. We have pathways in Alameda Plaza and lighting that needs to be completely replaced. We've got accessibility issues in many of our parks. We've done a lot recently to improve access. We could do a lot more. Mission Historical Park has a lot of the old Mission buildings in it, and we don't have any funds to really make sure they're preserved for many generations. So why are we talking about this today? The city has looked at infrastructure funding options, knowing that revenues through the general fund are never going to fund everything that the city needs. And we're talking streets, roads, buildings, sidewalks, parks, recreation, the library, and the list goes on. In 2008, an ad hoc infrastructure task force was formed and a series of recommendations were developed. Unfortunately, the economy went south at the same time, so that was put on the shelf. That said, it did give us some tools to move forward, and a prime example of what we're moving forward with is the Cabrillo Pavilion renovation. It was one of those high priority projects that was identified as a key community facility. You'll never build another Cabrillo Pavilion again. It's just not possible. How do we make sure it's here for the public for the future? In 2014, the City Council put together a subcommittee that went out and did some public outreach, that some polling was done, but council didn't get to a consensus on a ballot measure at that time. 2016, they started again. Particularly the Finance Committee spent a lot of time talking about what the needs were, and a lot of the focus, I will say, is on streets, infrastructure, the need for a new police building, but also parks and recreation and libraries. Right now, there's polling that's underway. City Council approved a contract in January for that to occur to determine what the community's appetite would be for a sales tax measure. As you look around the state of California, there are a number of cities that have successfully put sales tax measures on the ballot for the very specific purpose of reinvesting in public infrastructure. So we anticipate the results of that work will be presented to council in late April. Be back before the commission to give you those results, and then see where the council decides to go, whether to put it on the ballot for 2017. And that concludes my remarks. Be happy to take any commission questions or thoughts that you have. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there questions or of staff? Any questions? It's a little bit daunting. The amount of money that's needed and the amount of the number of facilities and acreage that the department manages. And this belongs to the public, and I think the department does a great job with very limited resources. And I just would like to express my appreciation for that. And for the visioning into the future. I think it is important. Other comments or questions? Okay. Well, thank you very much. And I think this is a good preamble for budget talks, because I think we're going to see the results of this and how we maintain our parks. So thank you. And that is the close of our agenda today. So with that, I will adjourn the meeting. Thank you very much, everyone.